May 29th. It's now 5 p.m. So we're going to start off, we'll have an invocation given to us by Commissioner Bingham, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by our County Clerk, Marla Young. If you'll please remove all hats.
Our Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee at this appointed time to discuss the issues before Box Elder County, we're grateful unto Thee for the opportunity to live here and to raise our families here and be able to work together to try to provide an environment of success and happiness. We're thankful unto Thee for the freedoms that we enjoy and the opportunity to be involved in the process. We pray that Thou will send Thy Spirit to direct us, to help us to know Thy mind and will as we work through the issues this day. We're grateful for all of our blessings for our family and pray that Thou bless them while we're away and ask for Thy Spirit this day. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And before we get in for administrative review, I'm just going to point out the fact that if anyone, we have a public comment portion of this meeting, but it comes to toward the end at item number 14 on the agenda. But if you do want to make a public comment, you need to fill out one of the forms that are found at the back of the room back there. So, we'll go here. Let's see. Anything on the former agenda items?
I have none.
Okay. I don't think there's anything, Sheriff, there's nothing on emergency management we need to deal with right now, right? Okay. And don't have anything for ARPA, LATCF, public interest presentation. So we're going to start off our item 7A, purchase project for lease agreement 7/1/2008. Looks like Mayor Bott just walked in the room. So Chance and Derek, you're going to present together. So if you want to come up here and tell us who you are, and you can, when you've handed out some information for us to look at, I think, here. So is the microphone up there set for you? There you go. Just make sure you pull it close, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, eat the mic, I get it.
Yes, exactly.
DJ Bott, I'm the Bear River Water Conservancy Chair, and then
I'm Chance Baxter. I'm the interim general manager of the Bear River Water Conservancy District.
Thank you.
all right, what we've got before us, and I don't think we have information. Did we give that to them? Okay, perfect. It's pretty boilerplate as far as I think we knew this was coming at some point, but the time is here, and I'll let Chance explain.
Okay, thank you for your guys' time. This letter before you, this came from our legal counsel. I'm going to kind of just read through it for the record. I'm going to start off with a little bit of history. It says here in 2008, Box Elder County agreed to issue bonds on behalf of the Bear River Water Conservancy District to finance the development of water infrastructure in the Bothwell area. To secure the repayment of the bonds, the county was given the title to the infrastructure and the associated property, which was leased back to the district in a lease agreement dated July 8th, or July 1st, 2008. A copy of that lease is before you guys. Article 12 of that lease outlines how the district can obtain ownership of this project. One of the district's options is to pay the county the purchase price and to give the county at least 45 days prior written notice of the district's intent to exercise this option. Pursuant to Article 12 of the lease, the district hereby notifies the county of its intent to pay all applicable purchase price, option purchase price on July 15th, 2024, which is 45 days from today, in order for the district to take ownership of the project. For this to be done, the district will need to pay off roughly about $106,000, plus or minus some for some interest, which will establish that exact interest amount on that day. Our attorney has added here that this is likely the first time that the county or the district has engaged in a process such as this, which means that an extra measure of communication and coordination is in order. We request an initial meeting to identify the appropriate points of contact and to develop an action plan. We also need to identify what other agencies or institutions should be involved in this process. And we thank you in advance for the county's willingness to work with the district to effectuate the conveyance of this project. Do you guys have any questions for me or DJ?
We're just gonna all point to Steve.
Yep. Steve has some questions.
I guess the only question I'd add is just, and it's basically what you're saying is need somehow to verify what the exact amount would be.
Yeah, yes, and it says in the agreement that that check will need to be written, that final payment needs to be given to Box Elder County, and then you guys take
Right.
it and go with that.
And I think what I'd recommend that we do, I just did a little bit of research before I came over. This was prepared for us by Smith Hartwigson back in 2008. I would suggest, once we get those numbers, we have them look at it, make sure everything's been complied with, and they're okay with us going ahead.
And then just give them to Charlene and make sure everything's kosher from,
That's our county auditor. That's
County
That's where the
auditor.
check would come to and be processed through her eventually. So we need to have her involved.
Right.
So,
because I'm pretty sure she has no idea that this was even laying out there. I've been here for 12 years and I had no idea that was laying out there either, so.
Yeah, the issue is, if I understand it correctly, the lease payments were paying off the bond.
Right.
So we want to be sure that's all paid off before we convey
Give
the
'em back.
property back.
So,
and we are paying them off early.
Right.
This wasn't supposed to take place till 2025. But, yeah, but we paid early and we'll be done this on the 15th.
Right.
cool.
So who will we need to be working with going forward then, just for my clarification?
Would it probably be Annie from your office, or do you want to have it be you to work with you and maybe Charlene?
Probably myself and Charlene.
Probably the two best ones, county attorney and the county auditor's office.
Yep.
And then do we need to involve our recorder at all, Chad, or not? Is there any reason,
I don't think so.
property-wise? Okay,
I don't think so.
And Boyd's on your board, so
yep.
that would be your other point of contact if you have any other questions, and then he can get a hold of us.
So I'm assuming the next thing we'll get is the exact number from you guys and a proposal?
Yes, I'll have our office manager prepare that number.
Okay.
With the interest and everything, and, yeah, and we're prepared to issue the check right away, so.
Okay.
So Chance, I mean, in your accounting software, do you have that dating back to the origination of this contract
Yes, and it's actually on
It's
the
in the
back
back.
of the,
on the
Yeah.
back? huh?
yep. Yeah,
Yep.
and we're talking about, everything's been paid except 2008D. So we have the 2025 and 2026 payment amounts that will need to be, or principal amounts that will need to be paid still.
You're not using the ARPA funds we paid you to pay us back, are you? I'm just kidding.
We are not.
Just making sure.
They're already spent, so.
Charlene would have caught that anyway.
Yep.
Not if she didn't know it was on the books.
She knows.
She knows.
At least she knows where the ARPA funds are and how they're supposed to be spent, so we're good there. Any other questions? So I don't think
I'm
there's any
good.
action we need to take at this time. We just have you work with
So,
the commissioner.
so do you know how to contact Charlene and Steve, or, I mean, how are you gonna work that out?
I'll reach out to Steve first and then
Okay.
we'll start working
Okay.
on it from there.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, you guys.
Hey, we just want to thank the commissioners back then and the commissioners now for doing this for the district. That's been an essential asset out in the Bothwell area for those folks out there. So we appreciate the partnership with the district on that.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You're welcome on their
Thanks, guys.
behalf.
All right,
Thank you.
now let's go to item number 8. Do we have our audit, our financial report? Or do you want to start with your part, or are they here yet?
They're here.
Oh, there they are. I see them hiding back there. You want to invite them up?
I want to make a motion. We don't have John come up.
See, he's not going to come up if
You're
you don't
supposed
let
to
him.
wave with me all 5 fingers, John.
Just one.
All right.
Don't worry, it died for lack of second.
Thanks.
You could just have John present then, or do you want to be here with him, Charlene? Is that, okay? If you want to just introduce yourself, John, and then anything we need to have from Charlene, that'd be great.
Congratulations, Stan.
Thanks.
I haven't seen you for a while.
Nobody heard that, thank heavens, because the mic wasn't close enough. So put the
You gotta
mic
pull-
up to
yeah.
your face and don't say it again. Just say who you are and what you're doing.
All right.
You got to pull that mic closer, though.
All right, I'm John Hatterley from Larson and Company, one of the partners there. I'm in charge of overseeing the Box Elder County audit. We're here to review the results of our audit. So everything's finished. Actually, everything's been submitted to the state and to the federal government, and everything's been approved. So at least on that end, you're good till next year. All right, so I'm going to start with the audit package and just go over our opinions so you understand what we're giving an opinion on, what we don't give an opinion on, and what those opinions are. So the first report that we're required to issue is the actual audit report, and it always precedes the financial statements. And the financial statement opinion is an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. I know it doesn't say those terms in the audit report, but our geek language, that's what that means. It's a clean opinion. And the basis for our opinion is we have generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards that we have to follow. And they kind of provide the guidance for the procedures that we need to perform and what we need to look at. The county is actually responsible for the financial statements. So even though we help prepare the financial statements, we have Charlene's office. They go through them with a fine tooth comb and make sure that all of the language is such that is acceptable to the county. And then she ties everything down to her financial records to make sure that the balances are correct. Our responsibility for the audit is to make sure that there is reasonable assurance about whether or not the financial statements are materially correct. And as part of that, we have to exercise professional judgment and professional skepticism throughout our engagement. So what that means is, you know, we have a pretty good relationship with Charlene, and we consult with her throughout the year. But our job is to investigate and verify the balances that you're expressing in your financial statements. So it's kind of a trust but verify. And then we look at the risk of material misstatement in the financial statements. So we'll talk a little bit about significant risks a little bit later on, but all of our audits are risk-based. So every line item in the financial statements, in every statement, gets assigned a risk. And based on that risk determines how much of a procedure needs to be performed over that balance. We look at your internal controls. We're not giving an opinion on your internal controls, but we make sure that A, you have controls that exist, and B, that they're actually functioning. It doesn't really do you any good if you're gonna implement internal controls and then not follow them. And really the controls are how you prevent things from happening. That the controls are what prevents opportunities from misstatements or misappropriations of county funds. We look at how you treat accounting principles, make sure that you're treating the way you handle certain transactions appropriately, based on guidance given to us by the Government Accounting Standards Board. And then we also, as part of our audit, we look to make sure that you can continue as a going concern beyond at least the next 12 months. So that's kind of our the term's slipping my mind. Kind of the scope of our audit. A lot of people think that we're coming in looking for fraud. That's not our primary motivation. I have seen where we've caught fraud before, but that's not our primary motivation. Our scope is your financial statements. We are looking for things that are out of the normal, and we will usually have conversations with Charlene's office or the appropriate department if we find things. All right, so sections of the financial statements. So there are certain sections that do not fall under our opinion, and that is the required supplementary information as well as the management's discussion analysis. So the MD&A always follows the audit report and precedes the basic financial statements. And then at the end of the notes, there's a section called required supplementary information, and that contains your budget schedules as well as the URS pension information. Those two sections are not considered part of the basic financial statements, so they don't fall under our opinion. However, the Government Accounting Standards Board
says that those always have to accompany the financial statements. So those sections give more readability and understandability to the financial statements. If you don't like to get down into the weeds of the numbers, the MD&A is a good place to read. It's kind of the Reader's Digest version of what's contained in the financial statements. And then at the end, there's supplementary information, so that is your non-major funds, as well as the single audit information, and that's considered supplementary. And those sections always just piggyback off of the audit opinion, which is unmodified or unqualified. All right, so now we're gonna skip all the way to the back. The next report that we're required to issue is for, just to reiterate that we performed your audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And a part of that, like I said, we look at your internal controls. What we're looking for is misstatements in the financial statements being caused by control issues. There wasn't anything that we need to report, so I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on that report. The next report we are required to issue is for the state auditor. We give an opinion on your compliance with the requirements set forth by the state auditor, and every year, they change every year. Sometimes they're on a 3-year cycle, so we look at things every 3rd year. Sometimes they're every year. The state auditor issues that at the beginning of every year. So the ones that we were required to look at this year is your budgetary compliance, your compliance with the fund balance in your general fund, the fraud risk assessment, the justice court, and restricted taxes and government fees. So these 6 areas, our opinion is unmodified, so we found no compliance issues there. And I always have to put in the caveat that this is not a legal opinion, and it's also not an opinion on the entirety of Utah code. It's very specific to those 6 areas. The fraud risk assessment, I think you guys know my opinion on the fraud risk assessment. As a commission, I would use that. You know, you guys really are the ones ultimately responsible. You should be the ones filling it out or understanding what's on the fraud risk assessment, and helping Shirlene's office kind of go through that and identify and assess the risks of every department, to figure out where you need to put controls. But me as an auditor, I don't put a lot of stock in that. We do our own fraud risk when we come and perform our audit procedures. But as far as the state auditor is concerned, you need to make sure that that's filled out. It's talked about in a commission meeting and then submitted by June 30th every year. All right, the next report we're required to issue is for your federal single audit. And our opinion here is also a compliance opinion. So we look at your internal controls and your compliance with federal awards, so how you spend federal dollars. It's also an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. The major program this year was the Broadband Project Access Grant, and that was from the Department of Treasury. So that's the grant that we were required to look at. So that was $2.5 million out of the $3.5 million that you spent federally last year. So the results of our single audit, there were no material weaknesses identified in the financial statements, and there were no significant deficiencies in the financial statements, and no non-compliance material to the financial statements. For the federal awards, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. There were no audit findings disclosed that are required to be reported to the federal government. Once again, just a reiteration, we tested the Utah Broadband Project Access Grant. And then you qualify as a low-risk auditee. So it's not low risk or high risk. You're either low risk or you're not low risk. And that determination really is hinging on whether or not you've had federal findings the last 2 single audits that you've had, at least the prior two years. And then it's been filed in a timely manner, so either 30 days after the audit's issued or 9 months after your year end. So those 2 things have to be in place in order for you to be low risk. And also, we look at the types of grants that are considered major. So if there's a high-risk grant, just by nature of that grant, we have to test that as a major program, and potentially that could trigger a high risk. It doesn't really mean anything to the county. For me as an auditor, it just means that my team has to have more coverage over your expenditure. So we have to look at more if you're not considered low risk. All right, so findings for the audit. I probably already spoiled it, but there weren't any findings related to the financial statements and internal controls. There were no federal award findings and there were no state compliance findings. Last year, there was a fund balance finding in the general fund. And there was also a budgetary compliance finding, so you were over budget last year. Both of those things were corrected and addressed and corrected in the current year, so not repeat findings, which is good. I will say, I think that in the general fund, I think there was one department that was over budget. And black and white says if you're over budget in a department in the general fund, then it's a finding. But the state auditor's office has given a little bit of grace, and we actually determined a materiality. So it wasn't materially over to where we would actually issue a finding. You had plenty of budget in total. It was just one department that was over. So just recommendation would be at the end of the year, as you're going through the budget, if there is a department that's over, just reallocate some of the budget just to cover. And then that way every department is under budget. And the state rule says in the general fund, it has to be by department. And all other funds are by funds in total. So like your capital projects, RDA, everything else, it has to be in total. And then if you have special revenue funds, then they have to be within budget based on the revenue stream that's feeding that. So sometimes it's in total, but if you have two revenue streams in one special revenue fund, then it's got to be based on both of those revenue streams. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the management letter. Not a lot's changed. It was a very smooth audit this year. I think we set a lot of expectations last year for Shirlene, and nearly all of those expectations were met. I'll just run through this real quick. So our responsibility in relation to the financial statement audit, as well as the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, that's all laid out in the engagement letter. So I'm not gonna go through it again, but that's why we have you sign an engagement letter, because it outlines kind of the plan of our audit. Compliance with ethical requirements. So my team, as well as myself and our entire firm, have to be independent of Box Elder County for us to be your auditors. That responsibility doesn't lie with Shirlene to know what the rules are. That responsibility lies with me as the partner, so I have to make sure that we're independent. And we get peer reviewed by external CPA firms, and that's one of the major things that they're looking, because Yellow Book or government standards significantly clarified what independence means a few years ago. And so that's kind of been a hot issue, is making sure that auditors who are auditing government entities are indeed independent. Significant risks identified. So at the close of our audit, we're required to communicate to you what the significant risks were that we identified as part of our audit. And just a brief explanation before, if you remember, I said that all of our audits are risk-based. So if we're looking at capital assets and cash, capital assets typically have a lower risk because it's very easy to determine the historical cost or what's presented on your financial statements to make sure it's accurate, because we can look at documents. And it's really hard to steal this county building, or it's really hard to steal a county fire truck. So not really easy to misappropriate. Whereas cash has a higher risk because it's easy to misappropriate and it's easy to misstate in the financial statements. So we perform more tests over cash typically than we would capital assets. And then overall, we have significant risks that are really either our guidance says we have to count them as a significant risk, or based on the nature that you're a government entity, they're significant risks. So those would be improper revenue recognition, which every audit performed in the United States has to recognize revenue recognition as a significant risk, and this goes all the way back to Arthur Anderson and Enron. If you guys are old enough to, well, I'm sure Stan's old enough, but was that close enough to the mic? So what Enron was doing was they were manipulating revenue so that they could increase shareholder wealth, and so after that whole downfall, then our standards changed that say that we have to recognize that as a significant risk. And then cash disbursements, because you are a government, you're dealing with public funds, you're dealing with federal funds. There are certain restrictions or timelines when that money has to be spent or how it can be spent. And then this last one is really just over internal controls. So it's management's bias, financial statement estimates, and the ability of management to override controls. And just a brief explanation on those. So in your notes to the financial statements, you can build in bias in your dialogue that makes something that maybe not favorable to the county appear favorable, so that users of the financial statements, as they're reading it, they think, well, that's not an issue, or the county's taking care of this. You can paint a picture better than what reality says. So as part of our audit, we have to read through the notes and make sure that there's not any bias built into that. Financial statement estimates, there's always estimates in the financial statements, and they change all the time. We look at those to make sure that they're consistent over periods. I would say probably the biggest one for the county, which you have no control over, is the URS. 1 year you're gonna have a pension asset, the next year you're gonna have a pension liability. I don't know how come it keeps flip-flopping, but we just take the information given to us by their auditors. But it is a little bit frustrating, I understand that. One of the things that I would do as a commission in Charlene's office, anytime you're making decisions, completely ignore anything about the URS in your financial statements. Because the balances that are reported inside your financial statements really don't exist. And the only way they're ever going to exist is if, let's say next week, everybody in the state decides to retire and we have to fully fund the pension to pay for everybody's pension, then they'll come to you and say, hey, we need you to pony up this money to fully fund the pension. Is that realistic? No, it's not realistic. Hopefully, they're on the right track to where everybody we have a fully funded pension in Utah. Believe it or not, as underfunded as Utah is, they're probably one of the best in the nation, and people are coming to Utah to figure out how they're doing it. And then the last one is just really the ability of management to override controls. So the best example I can give to explain this is Charlene has the ability to create a journal entry in the system. All of your financial statement system or Cassell should be built on transactions. So as you assess property tax, that's going to be a revenue and then a receivable. And as that person comes in to pay their property tax, you're going to collect the cash and then you're going to decrease the receivable. So those are two individual transactions that are now building your a complete financial statement system. If there's a mistake or if there's corrections at the end of the period that need to be made, then you have to do that via a journal entry, which is overriding that transaction control, because that journal entry is not based on any single transaction. So with that authority to create a journal entry, that's a good thing. But inherently, you can also use a journal entry to manipulate the system. So what does all this mean? It just means for my auditors, we have to plan specific tests that are addressing these specific risks. So for instance, journal entries, we look at every journal entry that's created in the system the entire year. We make sure that we understand what it's doing, that it's doing something appropriate, and that it's been reviewed and approved by somebody other than the person making it. All right. We talked about accounting policies, nothing to note there, and estimates. All of the disclosures in the financial statements are consistent, they're neutral, and they're clear. We didn't have any difficulties in performing the audit. Like I said, it went very smooth. All the information that we asked for, we received within a matter of hours. Usually if I have to wait weeks for information, or if my team comes to me and says, hey, I'm not getting a response, then I get concerned. And typically there's a problem on your side if you're not be able to provide us with information. My mind starts saying, well, are they recreating information? Are they trying to change information? What's going on? So no issues there. We didn't have any disagreements with management. The audit report, there wasn't anything that would have caused us to adjust the language of the audit report. Management representation, so we get a representation signed by Charlene and her office, and I believe one of the commissioners, maybe Commissioner Perry signed it. And that's just a full disclosure, kind of like we give you an engagement letter, we get a representation letter from you at the end, really saying that you've been forthcoming and honest with any information. The reason why we get that is when I'm reviewing my staff's work and making sure that our opinion is correct and the financial statements are correct, I can be comfortable with that opinion, knowing that you guys have been honest with any information. You're not hiding litigation from us. You're not hiding potential liabilities that could change the audit opinion if we knew about it. That's it. Any questions?
Okay. Shirley, you want to say anything? You're good? Okay, any questions from commissioners?
Nope. Thanks,
I don't
John.
have any, thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, we appreciate coming up. We spent the afternoon with one of your departments and asked a lot of questions and went through a lot of controls, and it was a good discussion. So we've kind of tasked Shirlene with starting to do that with some of the departments, and we'll probably help her with doing some of those. So
Thank
it's gonna
you.
look good.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you coming up and presenting that to us.
Thanks, Charlene. Appreciate all the good you do.
Yep, thank you.
Make sure you spend
Charlene,
some
do you
mo-
wanna
make
stay
sure you
here then and
spend some
present
money
the
on the
next
way
item?
out in Box Elder. Okay, all right, make sure. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, this next item is the purchasing card policy update. So I would need approval of the update to the policy. It hadn't been updated since 2013, and so there's been some changes in even the computer system that we use for P-card approvals and everything now, so we kind of tried to update language in the policy. And I provided that to you. I don't know if you have any additional questions.
Any questions?
I don't. Thanks for doing the update.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion on this, I think?
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve the purchasing card policy update.
Okay, have a motion to approve the purchasing card policy update from Commissioner Bingham
Second.
and a second Commissioner Summers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And you say you moved this one?
I think the
And next item
one
has
you
been
need to
moved to
skip
the,
over.
it'll be moved on the next agenda for June 19th on, it's planning outpost fee study. That won't be there. So our next item will be commissioner meeting date changes. So currently we have June 5th and June 19th. We had discussed, since June 5th is next week, we don't have any pressing matters, that we could make a motion to do one meeting, I think, in June for June 19th.
Yeah, I'd make a
We need to-
motion.
Then we need to deal with July as well.
Do you want to do that now or do it?
I think we
in
probably
June?
ought to do, we ought to do July now, so, because it has to do with canvassing. So we would change July 3rd meeting to July 9th and
Okay.
handle the canvassing at the same time.
So moved what you said.
Okay, so our motion from Commissioner Summers would be that we do not have a commission meeting on June 5th. We'll
June
have our June 19th meeting, will be our one meeting for June. And then we will move the July 3rd meeting to July 9th, where we'll have our canvass for the elections prior to that July 9th commission meeting. That would be our changes for the near future.
Second,
A motion from Commissioner Summers, a second from Commissioner Bingham. Any discussion?
just one.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a commitment on that day, but should be here, but I don't know. We've talked about it before.
The July 9th meeting?
Sometime between July 9th and July 12th. I just don't really know.
You just never know when a baby's gonna show up, is that one of those things? So, but we can do it, we can do it electronically, so we can do it.
I'll be here
on-
if I can. so.
Yeah, so we can handle that electronically, but we do need to have our canvas on July 9th, so. Okay, seeing no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, so we'll have that changes.
If it's a canvas and you can't call in, do we have to have somebody else? So we'll have to have Steve or somebody, right?
You can call in, I think we're okay.
Okay.
I should have some idea before. I'm actually going to be involved in litigation, so
Okay.
I don't have any
Any
way
control.
to change that, so.
Yep, we'll make sure if we can find
That's
out,
fine.
we can call in, if not, we could have,
We can have
we can
somebody
have
else,
another
somebody
county
else.
elected official be part of the canvas, is
Right,
that
it
correct?
goes in a succession of who it.
Seems like every time we do this, I'm the problem child, doesn't it?
Well,
We didn't say that. All right, let's go to the next item on the agenda here for commissioners. Appointing members to the Economic Opportunity Board. Sean, you want to come up and,
let's beat this dead horse one more time.
Now Sean doesn't look like a dead horse.
I'm not taking your bait. going to try to keep it brief, Commissioner Bingham. So, oh yes, Sean Milne, Bear River Association of Governments, Intergovernmental Affairs and Economic Development. So you may recall on March 6th, we appointed 5 members to the CEO board, which is the County Economic Opportunity Advisory Board, aka CEO board. Those were, just to remind you, Lee Perry, Commissioner Perry, representing the county, because there's a 5 minimum required representatives. The county is one of them, for a term that would expire at the end of 2027. Mayor DJ Bott, representing a city within the county, having a 2-year term, because we're shuffling them up to stagger them, that ends December 31st, 2025. Monica Holdaway, the Chamber of Commerce leader that she is, representing private sector, a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2025. Mark Alexander, who's with Bridgerland Technical College and their Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, representing the workforce development position, with a 4-year term to end at the end of 2027. And Joan Hammer, who represents, of course, tourism, but is not one of the required spots, for an also 4-year term ending in the end of 2027. As we had discussed at that time, and you directed me, I've reached out to a number of other individuals, and I'm prepared with 4 names for your consideration. Well, 3 technically, and a 4th one for a company yet to be determined, the particular person within that company. So Mr. Drew Anderson, as a member of the public, which would be the last and final minimum requirement for a member of the public at large. He currently works for Walmart Distribution Center, but he also is a farmer and farms a couple 100 acres in some winter wheat and barley right now. His father, you may know, is a former state legislator and owns quite the Pioneer farming equipment collection, from what I understand. The second would be Northrop Grumman to represent the aerospace industry, since it is such a dominant factor of the economy here in Box Elder County. The exact person I do not have for you, because they're considering internally the right fit. They're thinking of a couple of different people, Kay Anderson being one, and I'm sorry, I forget the other. So if it would be to your liking, I would suggest that you just give the authority to have someone represent Northrop Grumman on this, and I could come back later for just a ratification of a particular person. Counselor, if that would work. The third of the 4 for a suggestion tonight is a Stephanie Tuga Madsen, representing commercial realty, which I think is a pretty important perspective to have on such an advisory board. She's been wonderful for me to work with in a number of conversations I've had with her. And then the 4th and final for my suggestion for your consideration this evening is a Torin Martinez of Procter & Gamble. Obviously, food processing and manufacturing. Food processing, by the way, is factored into the manufacturing industry NAICS code. That is 33% of our county's economic contribution, so pretty significant. Those are my suggestions for you this evening. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions?
Nope.
Nope. That's a good mix, so.
Would you like to assign random terms to any of these 4 new additions if you approve them this evening?
No, just go 2 and 2, whichever ones you think of.
Okay, I'll choose a very impartial flip of the coin and kind of go from there.
Yep.
And then with your approval this evening, I would then look to work with the attorney's office to make sure that the resolution names these particular individuals so that Marla can put it up in the minutes, and then look to convene pretty rapidly within the next 2 to 4 weeks, the first meeting of this newly reconstituted board.
So moved.
Second.
We need to probably take a motion to put the people that he's listed on here.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we list those other 4 along with the other 5, right?
Yes, sir.
To
Commissioner.
be added to that, so we can make the resolution, so we can come back and be able to have the CEO board all together.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Summer, a second from Commissioner Bingham, that we're going to add the 4 names, or the 3 names plus the aerospace industry from Northrop Grumman individual on there with, along with the already approved 5, so we can get the resolution presented to get moving forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, Scott, let's go to Corridor Preservation Fund reimbursement, CPF 1702.
All right, Scott Lyons, County Community Development Department. This request is from the Box Elder County Roads Department. In 2017, they put in a request for corridor preservation funding to conduct county drainage study. The study was bid and completed at $83,377, and that project request went to the COG in April of 2017, and then subsequently came to the County Commission for approval in May of 2017. The road supervisor has since completed the study and submitted the invoices and other paperwork necessary to our department. We've reviewed that and are now here to request the reimbursement to the roads department for the cost of that study.
Okay,
So I just have one question. Where was this study done in the county?
A variety of areas. Let's see, I've got that. Let's see, there were 14 tasks associated with the study. So you had some in Corinne. Basically what was done at the time, it was sourced from a variety of cities throughout the county, kind of done a countywide drainage. So Corinne, Bear River Co-op frontage and Ag Park, Honeyville, 3600 West Frontage Road and Salt Creek, Fielding, 100 North to 450 West, south to Main Street, Howell, Snowville, Portage, Bear River City, Riverside, North Garland, Garland, Tremonton, 6000 West, 7600 West, and Elwood.
Wow, the county.
Yeah.
Well, we got some significant drainage problems and have had for as long as I've been around, so we no longer proverbially kick the horse turd down the road. We wanted to make sure that we got this stuff going, so in the future, we can, when the money's available, we can fix the problems that we've got. So people's houses will quit flooding and farms will quit flooding, and we'll be able to get the things done we need to do.
Yeah, this was 2017 we had some good flooding in the county,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the impetus
Precipitated it.
for the study to decide, where we could allocate future funding to avoid those issues.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the Corridor Preservation Fund reimbursement CPF 17-02.
Second.
okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Bingham, a second from Commissioner Summers to approve Corridor Preservation Fund reimbursement, CPF 17-02. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, let's go to the next one. Calder Family Rezone for unzoned to A1 ordinance 599.
All right. So the request here is in the East Garland area. There it is one parcel, the 19.75 acres, so just under 20 acres in size. It's currently unzoned, and the request is by the landowner is to zone it from unzoned to an A1 half zone. So that's an agricultural half acre zone. It is surrounded on the north, south, east, and west by other unzoned properties. And this went to the Planning Commission at their meeting earlier this month. And they reviewed it and made a motion to recommend approval to the County Commission. There was quite a bit of public there in the public comment period that was opposed to this. Based on communication I've had with other residents in the area, a lot of them were not aware that their community was unzoned. So they're opposed to the idea of half acre development in the East Garland area, which the current not zoning does allow for, and the proposed agricultural zoning also does allow for. the homeowner or the landowner, to some extent is restricted his uses in the sense that the A1/2 zone does not allow for commercial or industrial type uses, but it does allow for residential and agricultural uses. So you could say it's maybe a baby step in the direction that the community wants to go as far as agricultural preservation by no longer allowing commercial and industrial, but it's not the full step that the community would like to take in the sense that they're interested in preserving large lot agriculture and not seeing the potential still for half-acre development. I think the planning commissions viewed it. We have some planning commissioners that are view essentially the zoning of property voluntarily as a step in the right direction, and hence the recommendation for approval is it may not be the full step, but it's a baby step. I know you were at that meeting, correct?
I was, so there's a couple questions that I have. One is, when you did the general plan for the county, you were talking about, the people were talking about preserving agriculture. And it seems like to me that A1/2 is in direct inverse to that plan. The reason is when you zone that 1/2 acre, then you can put homes on that, and you put homes on that 19.5 acre parcel, and you're completely surrounded by agriculture. It creates havoc with virtually everything around it.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking from that's happened to my place, I understand it.
A1/2's a bit of an oxymoron, right?
It is. It shouldn't be. That's what I'm wondering, why we don't have a discussion with the planning commission about something that actually fits the need better than that.
Well, we had the same thing in Bothwell, what, 5, 6 years ago? When we went and had an actual area when we talked about A2, A20, A5, RR5, RR2. And it seemed like the community felt better when the community was heard.
Yeah, so the Bothwell community does have a community plan, and that was brought up in the county, or the planning commission meeting. That plan predates me, but they were able to, as a community, say, this is what we value, and this is maybe how we could implement those values.
And this community has never done that, is what we're talking about out here.
No, so this community did have, when we did the general plan in 2021, we held regional meetings, and some regions turned out more than other regions. So I don't know if that was, I can't remember off the top of my head what kind of a turnout we had from the East Garland community. I know a former county commissioner, Brian Schaefer, participated on that, and he did submit some public comment for the planning commission meeting, essentially referencing what was discussed in that meeting, and that was the idea of agricultural preservation, larger lot agricultural, maybe some development along existing frontage of county roads, things like that. And that's the language that was ultimately added to the general plan. As far as a specific community plan does not exist. Since the planning commission meeting, our department has been contacted by various residents in the East Garland community. We met with them and sat down and discussed if they would like to create a community plan. We said we support them 100% in that. We like those plans to be bottom up. We want the residents to be leading that. We don't want it top down. Nobody likes the government to come in and tell them what to do. So if the residents want to spearhead that plan, we're happy to support them. If they want to meet in, somebody's barn or the local church or something like that, we'll head out there with maps and answer questions, give them the opportunity to collaborate, that sort of thing. And then.
So Commissioner
go from
Bingham
there.
brought up the general plan, and I remember when we did the general plan, we talked about this non-zoning. First of all, with being with Brian being a commissioner, he should have probably known that his area was unzoned, which means, and I thought we talked about coming up with an agricultural zone for everything that was unzoned at that time.
Yeah.
So are we still headed down that direction?
We are. So essentially what the general plan does, it lists out strategies to accomplish what the overall like goal and desire of the general plan is. One of those strategies.
One of the findings was, when we took it to that guy, he just actually said that that was one of the findings that he said that had brought back to us, that we did have so much unzoned property in Box Elder County,
Yeah,
so.
it is an abnormality throughout the state
Right.
of how much unzoned we have. And one of the desires was the 93 or 94% of participants in the general plan process, survey respondents, you name it, was the preservation of agriculture was the top desire of anything that was proposed. So one of the strategies to do that was posed as like an agricultural heritage zone. And we started working on that. We haven't completed it. We were looking at creating some sort of a flexible zone that allows for the preservation of agriculture, large lot agriculture, while also giving those large property owners the ability to, split some lots off, whether those be for kids, grandkids, retirement, whatever it may be.
We talked about clustering, we talked about a bunch of different type of things.
Correct.
And being a big property proponent, I want people to do what they want to do with their own property. I don't want government to tell them what they should do with their own property. So if they're looking to try to maybe just split off, we have an agricultural, zone that you can actually, agricultural subdivision that they can apply for, even if anything goes through, right? And
Yeah,
we changed that law, 2 years ago in the state, so they could just walk in and basically have an agricultural split off one lot for whatever, 2 lots, and be done. Correct?
Yeah, so there are agricultural subdivisions. Those are intended to split off agricultural lots, so non-building lots. But we also have, the ability, there is the ability to split off individual lots for building as well. Like I said earlier, where it sits unzoned versus a 1/2, either scenario would allow for half-acre lots as it sits currently.
So Scott, I went out there and took a look at that, and there's a couple of things when I was here at the meeting. There was a lot of talk about the county roads and the county bridges. Stan would appreciate that, and they kind of sounded like that if this went in, the county was going to come out there and widen the roads and improve the bridges. And I'm thinking, I don't think the county's going to do that.
No.
I don't think the county has the money to do that. And so when we approve something like this, there is another consequence to that affects the whole county.
Correct.
But when I drove down that lane, I'm thinking, I thought, what do you call it, a B-class county road? It has to be 60 feet wide. Unless I'm completely crazy, that road was like 15 feet wide.
Yeah, it's a pretty narrow farm road.
And then if you was to graduate that out to 60 feet, you're gonna run into driveways of homes that are already established there, and there's easement issues and questions, at least in my mind.
Yeah, so I've been through a lot of that and spoken with the property rights ombudsman with the state to see how that would play out and what the county can require the dedication and improvement of the roadway to that 60 feet in front of this 20-acre parcel, but everything leading up to that still would somewhat remain a bottleneck. So the county could potentially require, maybe pavement or something. Basically, what the county can require has to align with the impact the development is having. But that doesn't mean that the county can require the developer to purchase and dedicate right-of-way, to the east, where the other homes are and things like that.
That becomes a safety issue. You're backing right out of your garage into a street. Right into the street, it looked like to me. I didn't measure it. I was just looking at it, but
Yeah, it is narrow.
it's narrow.
And I think a lot of places try to discourage this. It would be considered leapfrog development. If the landowner were to develop this, they try to discourage leapfrog development exactly for that purpose, so you don't have substandard roads or infrastructure then leading to you know, where the developer would fully build out the infrastructure adjacent to their parcel only.
Well, we did the same thing up in Collingston, where they started doing all this stuff, and then we had them get an agreement for the wider roads, then they had to come in and pay and do all the things that they needed to do there, so it's not like a possibility that they can't do it, it just might be cost prohibitive to do the things that they think, because, yeah, we're not gonna go in and redo bridges, and we're not gonna go in and redo roads, and we're not gonna go do that kind of stuff, so. I'd like to see a community come together and decide what they want, but I still don't wanna tell these guys that they can't break off things to their kids or whoever, to be able to build on, you know, certain areas, so.
Yep, I agree. I'm wondering if a little more discussion might be the appropriate approach. If we table this for a while and let this group get together with you and see what kind of plan they can come up with.
Yeah.
And we could even bring it back to a public meeting with the commission if we decided we want to do that, so.
I would make that in the form of a motion. We
Okay,
table
so we have a motion to table it.
Second.
That was from Commissioner Bingham, a second from Commissioner Summers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the next one, Losi Farm Rezone, 820 to RR2, ordinance 598.
Let's see here.
So I got another question, but I'll wait till you give your stuff first. Sorry, I went to the meeting and I had to sit there quietly. My wife tells me to sit there quietly, so.
Okay, so the Losi Farm rezone, this one is in the Collinston area, approximately 12,800 north and 4,000 west. I mean, in reality, you're kind of facing a similar situation. The applicant owns 110 acres, and it's currently zoned A20, and he is requesting that it be zoned RR2, which is a rural residential 2-acre. The land to the north, he also owns, it is RR2. The land to the south is zoned A20. Land to the east is kind of split between A20 and RR2. And then to the west, it's unzoned. To the west is across the Bear River. So my understanding is the applicant is interested in zoning it the RR2 because he would like to build a home in the center of this 110 acres, and for financing purposes, the way it sits, he would only be able to split off a 20-acre parcel and have to wrap that full 20 acres into the financing. So he's looking for a smaller zone to be able to build a home in the center of that parcel on. Again, similarly, the general plan in this area also addresses like an agricultural heritage area, larger lot agriculture, potentially smaller lots along existing frontages, things like that. And as far as public feedback, I know there were some people here for this one, but there were, not to the extent of the East Garland. Boyd, again, you were at that meeting. I don't know if you had any feedback or impressions based on that.
Wasn't an awful lot of feedback. The question I have is, what's the difference? So the Calder property was unzoned and the Losi farm is A20. So the option to do an RR2 is if it's already zoned, or could not Calder's do an R? What's the difference?
Yeah, they could have requested RR2 as well. He just requested a
Oh,
1.5.
okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that was an issue of where it's located or what.
Yeah. No, this landowner as the applicant just requested the RR2, I think because he already owned RR2 to the north, so he felt like it was similar to what he was proposing here to the south.
So I know from just listening, this gentleman come up and said, there will never be homes on this. He just had it rezoned for 2 acres. And everybody's going, wait a minute, you had it zoned RR2. Why? What do you mean? So I mean, I think there's a general distrust in the agricultural sector of the county that when people come in and make these smaller lots, that it's going to dissipate. It's like planting kochia weed. You probably don't remember that. Utah State University brought kochia weed into the county thinking it was going to be a great forage benefit, and it's turned into a humongous weed problem. And so that I think is some of the concern that people have, is that when you're out there farming around this and you get it zoned into small tracts where it's more easily sold, that it's gonna change, and it will change the whole nature of that community if it all happens that way, you know, and it's, so I can understand their concerns.
Yeah.
So if he rezones to RR2, does he lose his greenbelt status with that, even though he has the bigger lot?
As long as he, yeah, as long as he maintains, you know, my understanding of Greenbelt is over the 5 acre minimum,
Right.
in
And
owner-
farmable.
in ownership that's farmable in
Doesn't matter how
in
it's
the
zoned,
area.
as long as he's.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but the lot where he builds his home, if it's on 2 acres, he'll lose that
Yeah.
green
Yep,
belt on
he'll lose
that.
it for that 2 acres. Okay.
And he will have to pay back 5 years, right?
I believe
Yep.
so. That's the
Yep.
rollback.
Yep.
On that 2 acres.
Okay. Any further discussion
Oh,
to
thank you.
Losi Farm rezone or any action we want to take on that one?
I'll make a motion that we approve Losi Farm rezone from A20 to RR2, ordinance number 598.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Bingham, second Commissioner Summers to approve the Losi Farm rezone A20 to RR2, ordinance 598. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right. Let's go on to the next item is Willard City and Willard Canyon non-residential subdivision.
That's a weird
So,
heading.
yeah, so this one, and you should have a map there in your staff report, which kind of clarifies what this non-residential subdivision is. So you've essentially got up on the mountainside there, a parcel that is 159.76 acres. And the city of Willard has requested to split that parcel into a parcel of 170.85 acres and 11.09 acres. So the 170.85 would sit, you know, kind of on the higher side of the mountain, and the 11 acre parcel would sit on the lower, like southwest portion. That 11 acres is, as you'll see with our next agenda item, they would ultimately like to zone that MGEX, which is a mining, gravel, and excavation zone. It's adjacent to the Wells family / granite construction gravel pit there at the mouth of Willard Canyon. So the upper piece, they are proposing that it be zoned MU 80, so an 80 acre zone, and the lower piece would be the MGEX. So because they're not proposing, you know, a residential subdivision that requires proof of utilities and all these other things, we have a section in our subdivision code that allows for non-residential subdivisions. And they're, in that scenario, they're only required to prove or improve the subdivision to the extent necessary for the proposed use. So in this case, it would just be gravel extraction, and any infrastructure needed as part of that is already there as part of the existing pit.
I find it interesting. I think this is how many times this has come before us. Willard City wouldn't annex it. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, I think in the perfect world, this would just be annexed into Willard City and the county would not have to be playing the role that we're playing currently. There was some state legislation that took place, I think in 2019 or something like that,
Yeah.
Willard City feels like ties their hands as far as being able to annex this and do what they want with it without having potentially the whole hillside turn into mines.
Right.
So,
That top part that they were talking about would be, isn't that where their water comes from? Isn't that where their water comes down through that lot? When I'm looking at your map, the lot too.
Water line that comes through.
there is a water line that comes
Okay.
from up there, yeah.
All right.
So what about drainage? I mean, I meet with the Willard Flood Control District, and they're always talking about this king and their concerns for this king, and how is that gonna affect, if we rezone this and they mine that gravel, how's that gonna affect the flooding issues?
To my knowledge, it's not, but it's, funny you ask. One of the Willard City Councilmen is here this evening, and he used to be the president of the flood control district down there, so he could potentially answer that question for
We'll
you.
bring him up, let's talk to him. He doesn't need to think he's gonna get away here without answering a few questions.
I was just sitting back here minding my business.
If you want to
Well,
introduce
that's what I-
yourself.
Did you say mining your business or mining?
My name's Mike Bragger, and I'm currently a Willard City Councilman.
So what do you think?
Well, as far as any danger of the flood potential being increased by this, it would not, because it's not in the canyon itself.
Right.
It's just on the north shoulder, and the mining operations would take place on the north shoulder away from the canyon. So there is some danger on the canyon currently that they've, tried to mitigate with the closing of the fence, to keep rocks from rolling down onto people and whatnot, but they've mitigated that too, so. But there's no problem with flood control, none at all.
So since you're here, does the Willard City Council address this issue in your meetings?
The flood
The-
issue?
The annexation,
Yes.
and it passed in the council, it passed in your planning and zoning, and it's all,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
we're
we've been
here.
working on this for probably 2 or 3 years to get to this point.
Yeah.
And obviously, we had it before. As Commissioner Summers said, he's very well aware of it, so it's been an ongoing thing for a long time, yes.
Yep. So in your packet, like you said, if you read the packet and what they're gonna do and what they're gonna do, I mean, we may never see it in my lifetime, but Scott's kids and these guys' grandkids and things will, I mean, eventually it's gonna be a very beautiful project to be able to get done, and where Granite's, I hate to like sing Granite's praises, but they're willing to do a lot of things that I don't think anybody else were gonna do to make a standard of this and help Willard City, help county residents, this be a beautiful thing when it's all said and done, so.
So just to clarify, Scott, we don't need to actually do anything with the first part, Willard Canyon non-residential subdivision, or do we need to take a motion on that and approve that
Yeah.
and then follow up with the second one? I don't have any
have to do them
numbers to
all.
the first one, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so the first one, that one is still an action item.
Yep.
Okay,
And so basically, they kind of, they're separate applications, but they do go hand in hand.
Right.
Subdivision's kind of useless without the zoning, and the zoning's kind of useless without the subdivision, so.
Okay,
it would
but
be
we have to take 'em two separate
contingent
action
upon
items.
each other, but separate items.
wanted to clarify that.
And then so I don't know if you want to take action on one and then go through the other, or if you just want all of the information and then you can take action as you choose to do. from
Commissioners,
there.
which would you prefer to do? You want to get both of them? That way we have it all at one time and take
Well,
action?
it sounds like if we pass one, honestly,
Well, that's why I'm thinking, yeah, maybe we do both sides. So let's
Here-
hear both parts, then we can take action
if you want to
necessary.
talk about the rezone from the MU 160 to ME, that's, yeah.
Yeah, so that request, as I stated earlier, the 11 acres would be proposed to be rezoned to the MGEX, Mining Quarry Sand and Gravel Excavation Zone, and the 159.76 acres would be MU 80, multiple use 80 acres. All of it currently is MU 160. The request, it went to the Planning Commission, a public hearing was held, and in I believe it was December, Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission tabled it. There was still some, what they felt was Willard City wasn't on the same page, whether that it was some city council, mayor, and so the Planning Commission wanted the city itself, the applicant, to be on the same page as far as this goes. So they tabled it. It came back earlier this month to the Planning Commission, and the city stated that they did want it to go back to the Planning Commission. They wanted it to be addressed. They wanted action to be taken on it. I know at that meeting, I've received several emails still from residents that are opposed to it. It sounds like the city has done some outreach as far as to educate the residents as to why the city thinks it's beneficial to the city from a matter of infrastructure with water lines and revenue and different things like that to benefit the city long term. Obviously, there are residents that still, whether they're aware of all of those benefits or not, are not in favor of it. There's things, drawbacks that come from that in the, you know, trucks, dust, things like that. The county's biggest concern, Planning Commission, when they took action on this, what they wanted was, their recommendation did come as a recommendation of approval, but their recommendation was conditioned upon an agreement between the county and the city that gives the city both the power and the responsibility to enforce the conditional use permit. So as the county doesn't really benefit from this pit, but the city both benefits from the pit and suffers from the pit. Any calls I've gotten in my time here, they come from Willard City residents saying, hey, what's going on? Can you take care of this type of a thing? So this, the agreement that the Planning Commission has proposed be tied to the conditional use permit would essentially entitle Willard City to both the power and responsibility to address those calls, complaints, and enforcement with Granite moving forward.
And Willard City accepted that during the planning commission?
So Willard's, I mean, you were at the Planning Commission meeting, correct? I know Willard City, I've had discussions with Mike and the Willard City manager, Jeremy, and they both made it sound like Willard is amenable to that.
So who's drafting the agreement?
That would need to be drafted.
And an interlocal agreement would be appropriate in that arena to make sure that that happened?
I would think probably an interlocal between the county.
Okay.
So is
That's
that
what I
something
was-
that we'd want to maybe not pass this at this point, table it, get the interlocal agreement in place, make sure it's there before we do it? Because
Well,
if
you
we
can-
pass it, there's no guarantee that it gets
Well,
put in
you
place.
can
Is
pass
that-
it pending the interlocal agreement and making sure that that's passed. We've done that plenty of
I'm
times.
not sure that you want to try and tie that interlocal agreement to a zoning request.
Okay,
I understand what you're saying, the leverage there, but it really is tied more to the conditional use permit that goes into place.
Well, on both, I would actually say that the conditional use permit and the interlocal agreement be tied together, is what I'm saying. So that's what I would actually make a motion that we, you know, approve this pending the interlocal agreement and, yeah, the other agreement,
Conditional use
the conditional use permit also.
So you're saying.
I mean, their reclamation plan's already in place, right?
We've been working on it. We haven't got all of that done yet, but it's in place.
That's what I was just gonna say. I mean, because I'd like to see the reclamation plan and everything else be a part of this whole thing. So like I said,
I guess.
put the mic back over.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here. Okay,
We've kind of been working on this area quite a bit,
Sure.
with Granite, of course.
Right.
And one of the things we've done is some of the things we've asked of them is a little above and beyond what the county's asking. And so we've been kind of pretty stringent on this, so the agreements that we've been working on, and we want those in place before any of this starts moving forward. As far as, but this particular situation you're asking for, the rezone and the subdivision, so we can't move forward with any of that till this occurs, you know what I mean? That's kind of our opinion.
okay.
okay.
So we've got two issues on here. Do you have anything else, Commissioner Bingham, you wanted to ask questions?
So, I mean, I just bought a used car, and this guy kept telling me what the used car was gonna look like. And I wasn't willing to write the check until I had the used car in front of me. The businessman of me just doesn't really like to say, let's go ahead and do this, and then you'll do what you're saying you're gonna do. There's gotta be some kind of connection there, does there not? Some kind of an agreement or something to make us all feel happy. It's not like I trust you, Mike. I know you. It's not like I don't trust you.
That's what I'm saying. We can't, I mean, we can pass it pending the litigation agreement and making sure it's all signed. But if you want to wait,
We would prefer that, because we want it to be, you know, something.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
This agreement has to be done.
So I know Steve and I spoke about whether the agreement should take place at the zoning phase or if it should take place at the permitting phase. Steve felt like it made more sense at the permitting phase being tied to that. Does it make sense at the zoning phase to have that as a condition of approval, that those are tied together in the permitting phase?
I mean, it can. My perspective basically is if somebody comes in and wants to rezone this property,
Right.
they're entitled to the rezone probably because of the nature of the area. Has nothing to do with the agreement on how it's gonna be. It's part of the county right now, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
Once the conditional use permit goes into place, that's when okay, who's gonna police this, what's gonna happen? So that's my perspective, but I suppose if you wanted to tie it to the zoning, you could. I'm just not sure how much sense that makes.
So you're saying before the first shovel of dirt or rock comes out, you have to have a conditional use permit and an agreement?
Well, yeah, and you always have to have a conditional use permit before any
Yes,
of that goes in.
that's what I'm saying. The rezoning doesn't entitle them to start mining right now. It's just the first step. Then there'd be a conditional use permit issued.
Yeah.
And I
So,
think that agreement's gonna be, there's a lot of moving parts to that agreement.
so Stan, should we modify this and just approve this without the things tied, and let's work on that after we get done?
We have well, we need to start with a motion on the first.
Yeah.
If
we got
we're
to-
gonna take a motion, we need to decide what
Willard.
motion we wanna do. So we need to go to the Willard Canyon non-residential subdivision issue. Do we wanna make a motion on that?
I'd make that motion that we approve the Willard City, Willard Canyon non-residential subdivision.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve Willard City, Willard Canyon non-residential subdivision. Motion from Commissioner Summers, second from Commissioner Bingham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So then the second one would be Willard City rezone. Is it MU 164 to MU 180 or is it MU 160?
160.
So MU 160 to MU 80 and MGEX under ordinance 597. That would be the second
And
issue.
Steve, you're
We decide how
saying
to-
basically you'd feel better about it just tying that to an interlocal after they get the conditional use permit.
Yeah, otherwise, I think we're getting into like zoning by agreement.
Then that's, okay,
Not after, but as part of. the
as part
conditional
of,
use.
yes, okay. So I'd make that motion that we approve the Willard City rezone MU 160 to M80 to MGX ordinance 597. Do you want to say pending the agreement or the conditional use permit, or where you're saying together?
Well, all zoning is pending a conditional use permit. I mean, you pass the zone, they still have to get a conditional use permit, so you're just stating the obvious, really.
Right,
So I think you could just pass the zoning.
okay.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion for Willard City rezone MU 160 to MU 80 and MGEX ordinance 597. Have a motion from Commissioner Summers, a second from Commissioner Bingham. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion
thanks for your
passes.
work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. I didn't mean to call you up here just for fun.
All right,
Please stop.
let's go to item number 11, Fairgrounds Restroom Project. Cody. Pass that over.
Charlene, do you want to come up here too while we're,
Cody Alum, Buildings and Grounds.
thank you.
Was asked to answer some questions at the last commission meeting. Do you want Kevin to come up?
Well, yeah, we might, we asked the question about the fire marshal, and I think we got an answer on that.
Okay.
I don't know if Kevin wanted to come up and answer, but I did talk to both
Okay.
our county fire marshal and Tremont City, said there is no issue with a fire access or egress. Fire has no problem with the option of where we talked about if we just did the extension on the bathroom where it's at. There would be no problem with fire as far as that's concerned. So that's not an issue at this point, but we wanted to talk about the determination of what to do as far as that building is concerned.
With the funding. So afterwards, then Charlene sent out
Lee
the,
Larson, County Auditor.
Yeah.
And so I did I looked at the tourism monies, TRT and TRCC, and there is like 300,000 available if you chose to go with the full building and take part from ARPA and part from tourism fund. So it's really your call if that's what you want to do, but we do have enough.
Well, you got 300,000, it still
Funded.
puts us short of what the total overall cost was, because wasn't it 1.1 million with everything? Is that, what's the total overall cost?
I don't have it. It was 1.1, between 1.1 and 1.2.
Do all the
do
work
all
with
of it,
the,
everything.
bringing back the the gas line and all that,
Well,
right?
except for we don't need the gas line.
That was just to build a building, that
Just to
wasn't
build
a
the
gas
building?
line.
Okay, that's what I was just kind of confirming.
We did the gas line afterwards just to, we'd have to do.
And the initial amount for this was how much was given, 695 or 700?
We have in the budget right now 685.
685, okay.
That was refunded. We have that after the refund and the expense
For the
that we've
bathroom,
had.
for Fairgrounds restroom
Yeah,
project,
we have
right?
685 in there right now.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners on this issue, on this item, or any action we want to
Then the
take?
only other comment I would make, it really depends on where you want to leave the fund balance, you know, in the tourism fund.
Yeah, so if you took all 300,000, you would leave it depleted, correct?
Not depleted, you'd have enough to,
Because there's $1 million in there right now.
right? So
So you'd still
my
have 700,000.
recommendation would be to keep it around, just taking 300,000 down. But if you wanted to take it lower, we'd still have enough for
able to
functioning
do
of
it.
the fairgrounds.
Okay.
So when you're talking about modifying the restrooms that are there, what are you doing? Are you gonna tear the inside out? You're gonna remodel the whole thing? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, we will remodel the whole thing, all plumbing, all electrical. The main
Ceiling
will stay
out?
in there. We'll just run lights. So we're gonna go basically 8 sinks, 21 toilets, 4 urinals. That's the remodel with the existing cinder block building.
Just let me ask a question from the constituency, ask me, what's how many for the women versus the men? Just asking, because I've been asked this question by people who want to go to the fairgrounds.
There's probably I don't have that right in front of me, but there's all the majority of the toilets will be in the women's.
Okay, that was one of the questions just asked me.
Majority
If
of
some
them
folks
will
that
be-
want to go to the fairgrounds, they just want to know if we're going to remodel a bathroom, how
Yes.
we're splitting that out. So I'm just asking the
like I
question.
said-
They'll get the bulk of the
Okay.
the toilets.
And then this doesn't improve the ticket booths on the north or the other end.
That's
side,
correct.
Yeah.
Or the Lions Club.
That's correct.
So if we did this, we could actually, like I said, put a shell up, make the Lions Club, maybe do some fundraisers to finish their building off, but that would take care of both ticket booths and the bathrooms all at once and be done with it. So that would be my aspect of not kicking a horse turd down the road again to make it. And if we'd have done this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we had the money, it'd have been done, and this wouldn't be in front of us for another $300,000, $400,000, so.
Yeah, my experience is money's easier spent than saved. I know
Problem is,
from-
you can't spend any place else. It's not like I can take tourism fund and go pay a deputy. That's the thing. This bucket is for that bucket. You can't take it and go spend it someplace else.
I do think we have some other needs at the fairground, though, that we might.
Yeah, so it is a restricted fund, but there's a list of things per statute you can spend it on, but it's all related to tourism
Right.
or tourism-type facilities.
Okay.
And I agree with Lee that I think the drainage and the, I don't know where Darren left. I think he left too. We've been talking about this for 10 years too, with the parking lot and the drainage and everything else.
Well, and where the vendors are all set up,
Yeah.
we've got some issues
So
there
we've been
as well.
talking about that too. So, but with the extra money that we were getting off of some of the things that are happening with, we can probably look at that also, so.
So,
Take any action on this or not?
yeah, actually, Jen showed me around this morning. I appreciated her showing me around the fair. I've seen more of the fairground than I ever have because there wasn't any people there. You don't ever see the ground until the people are gone, but I feel like that I'll make a motion that we just do the remodel project for the restrooms and take that on right now, the funds we have.
Okay, I have a motion to take on and do the remodel for the fairground restrooms. Do I have a second? I'll second it for discussion. If we were to do this, I guess the question I have is, what was the cost of the remodel by itself? Do you remember?
340. I've got 347.7, and that's with the 40,000 contingent. So that's just to keep in place we have any overages. So it's around 300,000. I would budget 347.
Okay. Question for Charlene. I know that the 685 was actually ARPA funds. was it restricted to the bathroom remodel, or could we say we want to put the other remaining portion toward other enhancements at the fair park, such as maybe doing some of the drainage issues, working on the drainage issue, and maybe the repaving of the area for the vendors?
You can unobligate and reobligate to something else.
Okay? Do you know if it was specifically stated it was for the restroom building then originally?
It did say Fairgrounds Restroom Project. I'd have
Okay,
to
so
go
it'd
look.
probably
how
have
we
to be
worded it for
reallocated.
sure.
So if we did this, we wouldn't be spending the whole amount, we'd have to do something to
Yeah, it wasn't
reallocate.
general, just fairgrounds, so you'd have to decide you're gonna deobligate a portion, and then if you have a project you wanna obligate to, you can do so.
Okay. And
That
then
all needs to be done by the end of 2024, as far
2024.
as obligating,
obligation, okay.
so sooner rather than
And then
later.
the question I would have for Cody is, how soon, if we were to vote this, if this were to go through, how soon could we start on this? Would it be done for this year's fair, or would it be,
It wouldn't be done for this year's fair. I would go out to bid, as soon as you guys tell me, okay, I'd go out to bid as soon as I can, so that we would start the day after the fair is over. So it wouldn't be anything to do with, we wouldn't inhibit anything with next year's fair. So
Okay.
just this fund.
But we've
Jan,
been
are you
hear-
still here?
I've been hearing that for 4 years, Cody.
oh, Jan? Okay,
We're
nope.
gonna go out to bid, and
You
we're
come
gonna
up,
get this
Jan.
done.
I do have one question for our fair, the fair park itself. I just want to make sure before we do anything on this. Is there, if we were to pass this and were to do this, is there any events following the county fair, between the county fair and the time we normally shut the bathrooms down, that this would impact if we were to go ahead with this project?
No, we could shift everybody to the
East
restrooms on
restrooms?
the east side.
Okay, so that won't affect any of the events that are being, that's one of my concerns would be to do that.
There's events there, but we'll just have to tell everybody they have to go the other side.
Okay, all right, that helps me.
Or use the porta potties. I can bring in porta potties if I had to.
Okay, but there's not like major events after the fair that we have to have those restrooms up and functioning for, is that?
No.
It's gonna cause us a problem contract-wise?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. Any other discussion? Bring
I
it,
think
bring
we're
it,
making a mistake, but
Okay.
that apparently doesn't matter, so.
all right, we'll bring it back. Let's take a motion on the motion to fund the fairground restroom remodel project. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Nay.
opposed?
Nay.
So we have 1 nay, 2 in favor, the motion passes. So we'll need to figure out what to do with the remaining portion in one of the future meetings here to deal with that, so. Okay, let's go to the sheriff's office contract, 605, contract 2421 for bailiff security and perimeter.
Kevin Potter, sheriff, and Kate Palmer, my chief deputy, with me. I've got the contract with the state.
And there's
It's-
two of them, correct? We're gonna do it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird this year because the first one is the normal contract that we've always has, and we
Okay.
just need to renew it.
All right,
But in the time they were preparing this, the state ended up sending some more money, so we have to handle that part separately. So I need you to sign the contract first, and then I just have to go on, I don't even need a signature, but I have to just tell you that we got additional money on this contract, so.
okay, so is 2421 the original contract? Is that the
Yeah.
one we're dealing with?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and it's, a little background, I have to do bailiffs in the district courts. I don't have to do the security, but the state and everyone in the court system agrees it's best if bailiffs handle everything. So they made an agreement a bunch of years ago that we send our hours in and we try to get it 50-50, but different sheriff's offices are different. Some of them don't even have a district court, so it's been, the contracts are all different, but this year there was a real push with the legislature, especially Utah and Salt Lake County. We're not getting anywhere near what other sheriffs were getting, and I think that maybe this additional money is part of those discussions. But The bottom line is ours has always been one of the better ones, deals in the state, and continues to be so, especially with the addition, although, you know, frankly, it probably just is covering with the wages that have gone up, but still, that's better than not having it. But the agreement is $255,450, and yeah. Any questions before you sign that? And then I'll talk separately about the addition.
I'll just make a motion, we sign the contract 2421 amendment for the 2024 bailiff security and premier security
Second.
contract.
A motion from Commissioner Summers, a second from Commissioner Bingham for contract 2421 amendment for the 2024 bailiff security and perimeter security. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, actually, you know what? Let's see, make sure I got the
just
right
need the
one.
commission
Hand me
chair and
hand me the
and
other one
Steve.
too. Let me make sure we've got them right. Because I'm thinking we might have, they might be backwards.
24, 21,
I'm thinking 2420 is the original contract. Maybe I'm incorrect here, but make sure. Yeah, that's the original contract, right?
Sign them both.
So 2420 is the original contract. So we passed him, we need to pass we need to go back and pass 2420, sign it, and then do the 2421. So they're reversed is what
All
I'm
right,
looking
I'll
at
make a
here.
motion that we renew the state contract 2420 for bailiff security, and then go back and we'll do the contract for 2421 for the amendment for 2024.
Okay,
I'll second.
so we have a motion for 2420, which is the original bailiff contract. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passed unanimously. Now, we need to go to 2421, which is the additional amount. So let's do a motion on that one.
So moved.
Motion on 2421 from Commissioner Summers,
Second.
second from Commissioner Bingham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And you need me to sign both of, let's see.
No, I just,
You
you
sign
just sign the
amended-
original one, I can do
You
the
do the amended
additional
one?
30 grand, I
Okay.
can just sign.
We're gonna have Steve sign this one, though. So we have him sign that one,
Will you sign my copy?
and then we need to have you sign that copy for her. And then there's yours. Well, we're grateful that they decided to come through with more money for you. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank
Sheriff.
you.
Thank you for what you do. All right, let's go to Human Resources, 610 URS Tier 2 Public Safety Pickup.
Okay, so you have before you a resolution to pick up the additional 2.14% for public safety retirement for Tier 2. That
Per
is
state requirements.
Yeah, per state, that's what I was getting to. For URS requirements, we either have to pick it up or pass it on to the employees. And for recruiting and retention purposes, I propose that we pick it up.
I'll make a motion, we pass the URS Tier 2 Public Safety Pickup Resolution 2405.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to pass URS Tier 2 Public Safety Pickup Resolution 2405. Motion from Commissioner Summers, second from Commissioner Bingham. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Okay. Now let's go to the Box Elder County Handbook update on policy number 20, time clock guidelines.
Yep, so the major update in this is just a wording update. It's in section 20-5, overtime. Just states that overtime needs to be approved in advance by a supervisor, and without prior authorization, the employee may be disciplined.
Okay, any discussion or any questions? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Box Elder County Employee Handbook update to policy 20.
Second.
You have a motion to accept Box Elder County Employee Handbook update to policy 20 from Commissioner Bingham, a second from Commissioner Summers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
To Steve. That one needs a Steve.
Oh, this one needs Steve's signature. Okay, so this brings us to our portion for public comment. We have, looks like 3 individuals who've asked to speak here today. So, again, the kickers on public comment is no action will be taken on this time. Those wishing to make public comment shall sign the comment roll, which they've done, these 3 things here. They need to be responsible for following the rules as outlined. Speakers will have one 3-minute opportunity to speak regardless of the number of items they wish to address. The speaker shall address their comments to the county commission only, and this is the time to be heard. It will not be a back and forth dialogue with the commissioners, and the speaker may file copies of their remarks or supporting information with the county clerk. So at this point, we'll start out with Diana Baker. You want to come up? No, I don't, it's just my signature on here, is all we need?
Yeah.
Good there. So if you'll just state your name, Diana, and then you can talk to us about what it is you're concerned about.
Okay, my name's Diana Baker. I'm a Willard resident. I'm also on their planning commission. And I don't know my parliamentary procedure parts there, because on this rezone for the canyon, they had a public meeting, the planning commission for the county. They had pros and cons, and it went. They tabled it. The county planning commission tabled it because they had a few concerns about it. So they've tabled it for 6 months. 6 months comes around, and again, notice that the county planning commission is going to have they're going to address stuff that got put back 6 months. And I'm just wondering, don't they need to have some kind of maybe another public meeting that they're going to revisit that particular item? And it doesn't just involve Willard Canyon. This involves any rezone thing. If you have a public hearing, meeting, hearing comments, and it gets tabled for 6 months, shouldn't there be some kind of a public hearing so they can hear those comments again? So that's just my concern.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have that answer or not.
We really can't go back and forth with this at
Okay,
this point. but
okay,
we
that's fine.
appreciate it, and
That's
so-
my concern is,
But-
yeah, why wasn't the public informed?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next would be, let's see, Janine Bill.
I am grateful for the.
First, state your name. I know.
Oh,
I've
I'm
seen-
Janine Bill.
Thank
I'm
you.
just a citizen in the county, and I've been coming and observing the commissioner meetings, and I don't question the good intentions of everyone here, but I am a bit discouraged that with all the grievances that have been submitted to the county commission, there's been no responses. And yes, we have a right to grieve, but we also have a right to have a response. Otherwise, we're not really being heard. It is getting recorded, and I do think, I don't have it written here, but I do think if we were getting responses and if we're misunderstanding your procedures, it would educate us, but at the same token, it would also help the commission understand what their authority is rather than treating, I don't know, I just get the impression that as you conduct your business, it's like you're conducting this like a business when actually you're representatives and that you're supposed to be safeguarding our rights as well as keeping things in the proper balance and only granting things that you, by the Constitution, have the right to grant. I think you're, just even with this land zoning and everything, where did this all come from? In the Constitution for the state, it says the property owner has the right to do with their property what they need to do. But yet I also know there's safety concerns and everything, and it's very complicated. I think the biggest problem I'm battling is everyone's coming into as a representative and asking, how do we do this? Rather than understanding their authority and what they're really here voted in to do. And so basically, I do have more to say, but I agree with this other woman. There needs to be more communication. There needs to be a record of response to the grievances. Not the only response I've experienced here from the county commissioners when I was denied the right to speak of my concerns And then the clerk was good enough to respond to my concerns, because I submitted them even though I didn't get to speak, even though I didn't agree with the process, I at least received a response and had the recognition of my right to speak and understand what the heck is going on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next would be Deanna Hardy.
Okay, Deanna Hardy, Brigham. The Box Elder Community of Liberty opposes the visioning process of the United Nations Agenda 21, also known as Agenda 2030-2050, that is being used for the Water Master Plan. This visioning process was also used for the Box Elder County General Plan. Brigham City is also using this visioning process for their general plan and the Downtown Visioning and Main Street program. The Box Elder School District also used this visioning process. This is where I first witnessed the actual implementation of the visioning process after learning about it. The visioning process is designed to give the appearance of public participation in the development of a plan, but nothing could be further from the truth. Before the process begins, the facilitator has already decided the plan. Typically, the initiating agency, usually a planning department or planning commission or non-government organization, will hire a professional consultant to facilitate the campaign. The visioning process usually takes 12 to 18 months. Elected representatives, citizens, groups, and organizations are being manipulated and deceived to the actual tyranny being implemented by this visioning process. Elected officials must recognize that the only legitimate objective of planning is to provide for the protection and services that their citizens require. Nowhere in the founding documents is there authority for any level of government to design and dictate the structure or character of a community. I do not have time to go into the detail of the visioning process because of the 3-minute time restraint. So our committee will submit to the commission these 2 booklets titled Confronting Agenda 21 and Sustainable Development or Sustainable Freedom, which will go into greater detail how the visioning process works and how it violates our U.S. Constitution and Utah Constitution. I have previously submitted these 2 books to the Box Elder County Commission when they were first published. Our Utah legislature was very concerned at the time about Agenda 21, and they passed SJR 11, a resolution forbidding the implementation of the United Nations Agenda 21 in our state. However, this resolution has and still is being ignored, as well as our U.S. Constitution and our Utah Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And our last one would be Clyde Wesley.
Thank you for accepting my comments. If I get it all out
Yep,
of order,
if you'll,
please.
yep, no problem. If you just sit right there and then state your name and then.
Clyde Wesley, Willard, Utah. I spoke with Mr. Bingham today, and we talked about the Willard gravel pit. Part of that conversation was the fact that I told him that the Willard City Council, the current Willard City Council, has not voted on this gravel pit issue. And I got that through the mayor. He told me through an email, that they had not voted on it. Tonight, Mr. Bingham asked that question, and the Willard City Council, in, I guess, truth, however you want to look at it, they did vote on it last year, but this current city council has not. And I just wanted to clarify that so that Mr. Bingham doesn't think I'm up in the night, because I was just stating facts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Okay, that concludes all of our public comment. We've taken care of the warrant register, and so is there any closed session? Nothing? Okay, nothing there. All right, take one final motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.